Suppose you are standing in a courtroom watching a trial unfold. The accused is a man who has committed unthinkable crimes. He has stolen from the weak, betrayed his friends, destroyed lives without remorse. He is cunning, ruthless, and undeniably evil. But he is not the one on trial. Instead, the people sitting in the defendant's chair are the ones who followed him. The ones who obeyed his orders, who nodded along, who did what they were told without question. A simple shopkeeper who reported his neighbor, a bureaucrat who signed the documents, a soldier who carried out the executions. None of them set the plan in motion. None of them intended to do harm. And yet, they were the ones who made it possible. The question that looms over this trial is chilling. Who is more dangerous, the evil mastermind or the obedient fool? Evil is calculating. It knows its purpose. It exists to destroy, to corrupt, to conquer. But stupidity? Stupidity does not question. It does not doubt. It does not think. It simply obeys. And in that blind obedience, it becomes the perfect tool of evil itself. This is what Dietrich Bonhoeffer feared most. Not the monsters who plot in shadows, but the ordinary people who make those plots a reality. But why? Why does stupidity enable evil more effectively than malice itself? And more importantly, how can you escape its grip before it's too late? Stupidity is not merely a lack of intelligence. It is not an issue of IQ or education. Some of the most educated people in history have been complicit in unimaginable atrocities. Stupidity, as Bonhoeffer understood it, is something far more insidious. It is a condition, a force that overtakes the mind, rendering it incapable of critical thought. Carl Jung warned of this phenomenon in his exploration of the collective unconscious. He saw how individuals, when absorbed into a group, abandon independent reasoning. They no longer think for themselves, but instead think as the group dictates. The greater the mass, the stronger the force of stupidity. It thrives on conformity. It grows in obedience. And the terrifying part? It does not recognize itself. Friedrich Nietzsche saw this unfolding in the herd mentality, the idea that people, when faced with uncertainty, prefer comfort over truth. They willingly trade their ability to think critically in exchange for a sense of belonging. When a society rewards obedience and punishes dissent, stupidity does not just become common, it becomes a virtue. And yet the most unsettling truth of all is this: stupidity is not neutral. It is not passive. It is not harmless. It is an active agent of destruction. Unlike evil, which carries the burden of intention, stupidity marches forward without hesitation, without reflection, without guilt. It believes itself to be righteous, even as it paves the road to ruin. But what happens when an entire society is overtaken by this force? When the blind lead the blind, when the unthinking outnumber the thoughtful, the answer is far worse than you imagine. Now, the unseen consequences. Imagine a world where the greatest dangers do not come from the wicked, but from the well-intentioned. A world where people, convinced of their own virtue, unknowingly bring about destruction. Where policies that strip away freedoms are enforced not by tyrants, but by ordinary citizens who believe they are doing what is right. This is the silent power of stupidity. It does not need to justify itself. It does not ask, "Is this true?" but rather, "Is this what everyone else believes?" It does not seek knowledge, only confirmation. And because it does not doubt, it cannot be reasoned with. Bonhoeffer recognized that evil, though dangerous, is limited. It must conceal itself. It must strategize, deceive, and manipulate. But stupidity needs no disguise. It walks in broad daylight, convinced of its own righteousness. It spreads through schools, governments, social movements, without resistance, because no one believes they are part of the problem. Psychologists call this cognitive ease, the tendency to accept ideas that feel familiar without questioning their validity. Entire societies are shaped by this phenomenon. Atrocities are committed not by monstrous villains, but by clerks, officers, and journalists who simply followed orders. The machinery of destruction is not run by demons. It is built by people who never stop to ask, should we be doing this? And so, stupidity does what evil never could. It makes oppression feel justified, injustice seem fair, and destruction appear necessary. It does not destroy with cruelty, but with conviction. But if stupidity is this powerful, is there any way to break free? Or are we doomed to be swallowed by it, repeating history's mistakes in an endless cycle? The answer lies in rebellion, but not the kind you think. Imagine waking up one morning and realizing that nearly everything you believed, the news you trusted, the lessons you were taught, the rules you followed was never questioned, only inherited. That your opinions were not truly your own, but the echoes of a society that taught you what to think rather than how to think. This is the first step to rebellion. Doubt. Not blind cynicism, but radical, unflinching self-inquiry. The willingness to ask, why do I believe what I believe? And to accept that the answer may be unsettling. Bonhoeffer knew that stupidity thrives where people accept truth without question. To break free, you must train your mind to see not just what people say, but why they say it. You must resist the comfort of easy narratives and recognize when you are being lulled into passivity. History's great rebels, Socrates, Nietzsche, Galileo, were all labeled dangerous, not because they were evil, but because they refused to comply with stupidity. They shattered illusions. They forced the world to confront uncomfortable truths. They saw what others ignored, that to be truly free, one must be willing to stand alone. But rebellion is not just about rejecting stupidity. It is about replacing it with wisdom. This means reading what challenges you, surrounding yourself with thinkers who force you to defend your ideas, and resisting the seductive pull of collective certainty. It means choosing the burden of thought over the ease of conformity. And yet, even among those who see through the illusion, a final, terrifying question remains. If stupidity is so deeply embedded in human nature, can it ever be overcome? Or is the battle unwinnable? There is only one answer, and it changes everything. What if the battle against stupidity is not one that can be won, but one that must be fought regardless? Bonhoeffer did not believe that stupidity could be eradicated like a disease. He knew that it was a symptom, a condition that arises whenever power and complacency replace thought and courage. Stupidity is not about intelligence. It is about will. The will to question, to resist, to think when thinking is dangerous. And yet, here is the final, most unsettling truth. Most people will never choose this path. Not because they are incapable, but because to break free from stupidity is to break free from the very fabric of comfort, certainty, and belonging. It is easier to be accepted by the blind than to see alone. Easier to follow the current than to swim against it. The price of freedom is isolation, and the burden of wisdom is knowing that most will reject it. But for those who do choose to see, who choose to think, even when it costs them everything, there is another kind of freedom. A terrifying, exhilarating liberation that comes from realizing that truth does not require permission. That wisdom is not about defeating stupidity, but about refusing to become part of it. And so, the final question is not whether stupidity will win. It always has, and it always will, for the majority. The real question is, will you be among them?